How to access the local Django web server from outside world. I followed the instructions here to run Django using the built-in web server and was able to successfully run it using Python manage.py run server. If I access 127.0.0.1 port locally from the web server, I get the Django page indicating it worked. I realize the Django web server is not a production server, but it's important for me for testing purposes to be able to access it from the outside world, i.e. not from a web browser on the server, but from a different computer. I tried, but it did not work. I also tried using the IP instead, based on ifconfig, to access. Which did not work either. The web server is running, so it must be accessible from the outside. I'm just not sure how. I am running Linux with Apache, though I have not configured Django with Apache. Any ideas on how to do this?
You have to run the development server such that it listens on the interface to your network. For example, listens on every interface on port 8000. It doesn't matter whether you access the web server with the IP or the hostname. I guess you are still in your own LAN. If you really want to access the server from outside, you also have to configure your router to forward port, for example 8000, to your server. Check your firewall on your server whether incoming connections to the port in use are allowed. Assuming you can access your Apache server from the outside successfully, you can also try this. Stop the Apache server, so that port 80 is free. Start the development server with sudo python manage.py run server 0.0.0.0 column 80.
I had to add this line to settings.py in order to make it work, otherwise it showed an error when accessed from another computer. Then ran the server with. Also ensure that the firewall allows connections to that port.
Pick one or more from. Your application isn't successfully listening on the intended IP port because you haven't configured it successfully, because the user doesn't have permission to. Your application is listening successfully on the intended IP port, but clients can't reach it because the server local iftables prevents it, a firewall prevents it. So, you can check that your application is listening successfully by running alsoph-i as root on the machine and look for a Python entry with the corresponding port you've specified. Non-root users generally cannot bind to ports is lower than 1024. You'll need to look at iftables NVL to see if there's a rule that would prevent access to the IP port that you are trying to bind your application to. If there is an upstream firewall and you don't know much about it, you'll need to talk to your network administrators.
Just do this. By the above command you are actually binding it to the external IP address. So now when you access your IP address with the port number, you will be able to access it in the browser without any problem. Just type in the following in the browser address bar, e.g. You may have to edit the settings.py, add the following in the settings.py in the last line. Hope this will help.
If you want to see more, please ensure to subscribe.